For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stefano Forte. I'm the president of the New York Young Republican Club. Out of everybody in here, raise your hand if you are not a member of the club. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Wow, okay, couple of you. I'm deeply disappointed. Not good. If you are a new member of the club, raise your hand. New member. Oh, quite a few new members in the room. Round of applause for them. Now, for all of you that are not members of the club, first off, I'm very disappointed in you. Second off, I want everybody here who is a member of our board of governors or leadership on the club to raise your hand. Please raise your hand. If you would like to become a member, find one of these people. We will make you a member tonight, okay? So, fantastic. This evening, we are proud to host one of the most influential conservative thinkers of our time. Dr. Paul Gottfried is a historian, political philosopher, and professor emeritus of humanities at Elizabethtown College. We are truly honored to have him with us tonight as we discuss the collapse of the political middle and the death of the normie. Give a round of applause for the good doctor. On our topic tonight, everybody has heard about this mythical undecided voter. Everybody talks about this mythical undecided voter. Has anybody actually met an undecided voter? Anybody in this room who was trying to figure out if they were going to vote for Zoran or Cuomo? Anybody that was really confused about if they were going to vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Somebody who can't figure out if they want their nation filled with foreigners who jumped over the border or mass deportations? No, they don't exist. Modern elections are decided by one thing and one thing only: turnout and enthusiasm on one side or the other. Who has it, who doesn't? In 2024, we had one of the best modern campaigners in the history of the Republican Party, President Donald J. Trump. On the other side was a flaccid, weak candidate that couldn't get through her own primary. It's a wonder that she managed to become vice president, and the fact of the matter is the outcome was predetermined before anyone had put their name on the ballot. Nobody was truly undecided in 2024. Absolutely nobody was undecided in 2025, and I think the New York's mayoral race showed that people already know who they're going to vote for before they go out there. These mythical, moderate Democrats that we talk about, these people are Republicans and they just don't know it. Zoran Mamdani didn't really fool a lot of those people. Andrew Cuomo was the only option for a lot of those people. We are seeing a massive realignment in New York City, due to no small part because of this club and the actions that we have taken to help push many of those moderate voters towards the Republican Party. The right now must not be reactionary. The right now must offer a new future, an American future. We cannot look like radicals because in combating leftist radicalism, the only option to beat them is radical in return. So what we must do now is fight forward and create a new American future, a populist, Americanist futurism that we will all partake in. Dr. Gottfried is the author of numerous essential books, including After Liberalism, Multiculturalism and the Politics of Guilt, Fascism, The Career of a Concept, and Anti-Fascism, The Course of a Crusade. These are not merely academic works. They're foundational texts for anybody who seeks to understand the realities of power, ideology, and history. Dr. Gottfried is widely recognized for coining the term paleoconservative, helping to define and give intellectual coherence to an ideology actually rooted in the American tradition. It shaped how we came to understand conservatism as something deeper than the managerial politics or Washington consensus thinking. Indeed, many members of this club would proudly consider themselves paleoconservatives and would see Dr. Gottfried's work was instrumental in helping articulate a serious alternative to the long dominant neoconservative Republican establishment. Dr. Gottfried has influenced generations of scholars, writers, and activists, not by chasing trends, but by insisting on serious thought in an age that often punishes it. His voice remains indispensable for anyone who wants to understand where our political order came from, why it looks the way it does, and where it may be heading. We are truly honored to have him with us tonight as we discuss the collapse of the political middle and the death of the normie. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Gottfried. And before we begin tonight, we are proud to gift Dr. Gottfried one of our challenge coins here. Dr. Gottfried, there you go.
Thank you.
And we saw that you didn't raise your hand before. You're not a member of our organization, but tonight we're happy to extend a free membership to you for you to be a member of the New York Young Republican Club. Thank you very much.
It looks like all of you have come to hear an unnecessary lecture since the president of this group has said just about everything that I intend to say in the next 20 minutes. In fact, it was remarkable to hear my views resonate from somebody who probably is young enough to be my grandson. He said exactly what I believed about the polarization. In fact, and the non-existence of democratic moderates. I don't know whether I'm disappointing you or not, but I would like to speak on something which is perhaps closer to what you said than the disappearance of the center or the normie, the oppression of the normies in the United States. And in fact, I would like to talk about why there are no moderate Democrats and also why there are no natural Republicans. With all due respect to the GOP establishment and Fox News, they don't exist. During a recent get-together with longtime friends, I had to endure lavish praise being showered on our Democratic governor in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Can you hear me? Am I speaking? Am I audible? Okay. Unlike such extremists as Bernie and Mamdani, Josh, I was told, inhabits the political center. He's a friend of Israel, and perhaps equally significant, he won't confiscate our well-deserved earnings by imposing exorbitant taxes. In June 2023, our governor ordered the immediate repair of a collapsed bridge on the outskirts of Philadelphia. And this extensive repair was made in record time as his PR exultantly announced, Josh gets things done. In fact, the governor does get things done. Most recently, as the Washington Examiner reports, he's been forcing the Little Sisters of the Poor to pay for their employees' contraception and sterilization coverage. Josh is taking this action despite a 7-2 Supreme Court decision upholding the right of the seemingly victorious nuns not to have their religious consciences trampled on. This act of defiance doesn't quite square with the information coming from the talking heads on Fox News, who fawn on Shapiro as a moderate. He's allegedly different from those Democratic radicals who may occasionally sound like him, but who are big on free stuff and have an exceedingly soft spot for Hamas. Here's a politician, however, who pleases the mass media, and more generally the left whenever he touches on social issues. Shapiro enforces DEI, and he energetically and even boastfully pushes his blatant form of discrimination in the hiring of state employees and anywhere else he can. Shapiro is also enthusiastic about gender-affirming care and has zealously promoted this leftist policy. I'm relating these matters because most of the conservative media won't. They mislead us by exaggerating the distinction between moderate and radical Democrats. Shapiro explicitly claims for himself the title moderate and urges everyone to tone down inflammatory rhetoric. But he himself has made an unseemly habit of going after Vice President Vance as an enabler of anti-Semitism, a defender of neo-Nazi political parties in Germany. The words are Shapiro's from an NBC interview on January 28th. And as a Republican leader who insulted Jewish victims of the Third Reich by not mentioning their Jewish identity. Apparently, Vance's failure to mention this identity explicitly in his commemoration indicates hostility toward Jews, even if it should have been obvious from the context to whom the reference was made. Moreover, Shapiro tries to link J.D. Vance to Nick Fuentes' podcast, although Vance has emphatically dissociated himself from all purveyors of anti-Jewish sentiment. Although Shapiro, in an interview with Bret Baier on January 28th, asserted that there is anti-Semitism on the left as well as on the right, I'm waiting for the supposed exemplar of moderation to provide examples of prejudice that are not exclusively fathered on the other party. Republicans who speak about moderates may be trying to convince Democrats on the center-left that their party is falling into the hands of extremists. Rational Democrats should therefore take back the party of FDR, Truman, and Bill Clinton, or perhaps work up the courage, and this may be the overriding aim here, to vote for the GOP. But what seems to be a tactic for recruitment or alliance building will only confirm the judgment of those who are truly on the left center. That voting for allegedly centrist Democrats is a vote for moderation. This, mind you, is for these Democrats not the same as voting for the Republicans, whom these moderates consider to be unacceptably right-wing. Still, authorized conservatives beam with goodwill when they refer to supposedly nice Democrats. Unfortunately, this practice is not likely to benefit our side. Moderate Democrats like Shapiro combine their urging of moderateness with rants against those trads who apparently dominate the GOP. These would-be centrists view Republicans as being a different breed from themselves or from those sensitive government leaders who protect women's rights to choose up until the baby comes down the birth canal and who champion the surgical wishes of those with gender dysphoria. A particularly egregious snow job for a misrepresenting socially leftist Democratic governor has come to my attention recently, courtesy of The Hill. This website publication can't get enough of Andy Bashar, the Kentucky governor whose folksiness enchants otherwise deep-red Kentuckians. The Hill quotes a wealthy Democratic donor, John Morgan, who extols Andy's ability to reach out. For those craving normalcy, he is their answer, said John Morgan, a Democratic donor and injury lawyer who recently met with Bashar and found him to be totally impressive. Morgan says he has a very good chance of winning the presidency should the party choose to highlight this governor's authenticity. He has won 3 times in a very red state, Morgan said. He knows the path. One would never know from all this hullabaloo that, like Shapiro, Bashar fully embraces the LGBTQ agenda, which he frames in the language of caring and sharing. The persistent misuse of moderate also forces the conservative establishment media to hollow out its notion of conservative. From the overuse of the term moderate Democrat, it seems there is no contradiction between a moderate and someone who buys the whole woke package. Although John Fetterman stands with the left on just about every social issue, our conservatives flatter him because he's good on the Middle East, went along with the continuing resolution pertaining to the budget, and supported the president's action in Venezuela. This is all fine and good, but we should point out that for balance, Fetterman is much closer on social questions to Mayor Mamdani than he is to Vice President Vance or even Senator Cruz. The problem with having media conservatives depict social leftists as moderates and sensible Democrats is this klutzy trick may come back to bite them. It's one thing to cultivate some occasionally pliant congressional Democrats to vote with your guys or even to butter up some Democratic governor to allow ICE to nab criminal illegals without riots. But it's another matter to swoon over woke Democratic politicians because they seem slightly less wacky than their colleagues. I confess that I'm getting a headache listening to Laura Ingraham, Brian Kilmeade, Trey Gowdy, and Sean Hannity scold the other party for running radicals rather than moderates. How many moderate Democratic politicians would emphatically deny that men can get pregnant, or would insist that biological men claiming to be women should not be allowed to use girls' lockers or participate in women's sports? Perhaps we can count them on either hand's fingers. Also unsettling for me was the glowing endorsement of Josh Stein in the neoconservative tablet when he was running against Mark Robinson, a black Republican pastor, in the 2024 North Carolina gubernatorial race. Although Robinson undoubtedly engaged in loose talk, thereby sometimes calling adverse attention to himself, his neoconservative commentators went into a feeding frenzy running him down. This Republican candidate who dared to express opposition to gay marriage and abortion was characterized as a lunatic, where Stein was portrayed, quote, as a proud Jew, pragmatic progressive representing the political center, unquote. We were also told in this commentary that Robinson is, quote, the kind of political arsonist incapable of winning a high turnout election in North Carolina, where voters tend to reward pragmatism and moderation. If there was a difference in how the New York Times and Tablet presented this race, I have no idea what it was. Since his election, Stein has behaved like other left-of-center Democrats, save for his disapproving statements about Hamas, perhaps intended for his friends at Tablet. Finally, the more readily one judges politicians on the left as moderate, the easier it becomes to depict leftists as representing the mainstream and to push Republicans into the box reserved for extremists. Thus, Gretchen Whitmer, who has faithfully pursued the leftist social policies of other Democratic governors, was celebrated in roll call as a pragmatic moderate when she responded to Trump's acceptance speech after his renomination in 2020. This description suggests that Whitmer deserves our trust, and she's not quite as radical as some other Democrats. She's supposedly more level-headed than those far-out Democratic progressives, and so we can feel safe having Gretchen and not AOC putting males into girls' lockers and authorizing sex change operations for minors. Based on this minimalist standard, Stalin was a moderate mass murderer in comparison to Hitler, or perhaps Hitler was a moderate tyrant in comparison to Mao. At some point, in any case, the word moderate loses all relationship to reality. The much celebrated Democratic moderate Abigail Spanberger spent her first day in office as Virginia governor last month signing moderate executive orders, for example, prohibiting all government workers from in any way cooperating with ICE and reintroducing DEI, now known as affirmative recruitment and state employment. Not at all surprisingly, Spanberger is falling in line with another newly elected female moderate Democratic governor, Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey, who has also pledged to block the operation of ICE in her state. Meanwhile, Abigail in Richmond could hardly wait for day one to begin to remove a bust of Robert E. Lee from the Virginia Capitol, since presumably this illustrious early American was not a friend of moderate Democrats. On her first day in office, centrist Spanberger filled 27 open seats at state universities with outspoken advocates of DEI. Among other proposals now being considered by her administration is forbidding the hand counting of election ballots and extending by weeks the post-election period for returning mail-in votes. Spanberger's Democratic legislature will soon have a bill on her desk calling for reducing the required prison time for several categories of robbery and expanding eligibility for parole for imprisoned criminals. The odds are that she'll sign all of these bills. Lest anyone think I've lost my senses, Let me make clear that I think some Democrats are more destructively radical than other ones. If forced to choose between Fetterman and Jasmine Crockett in a hypothetical presidential race, I would give my vote reluctantly to our PA senator against an opponent who belongs in the loony bin. As a traditional conservative, I'm aware there are degrees of badness on the dark side. But selecting the lesser of two evils is different from celebrating the lesser evil as a brilliant choice. And it's best to do what one can to avoid having to make such unpalatable decisions. I'll also confess that on occasion I followed the Italian political teaching il peggiore e il meglio, the worse the better. Thus, if required to choose in a primary between Mamdani and Cuomo, and if Sliva were not the alternative to both, I might have picked the pro-Hamas wokester who is now your mayor. He's a bit more likely than a slightly less odious Democrat to cause big harm in the short term. And so riding on a political roller coaster with Zoran may sway New Yorkers who can still be swayed, at least those who can be swayed, to support a future mayor who is better than either Mamdani or Cuomo. Another familiar figure in the conservative establishment's world of delusion is the natural Republican, a subject that a young podcaster, Jay Burden, has discussed in our magazine Chronicles. Supposedly all or most groups that invariably vote with the left abound in true conservatives who are still discovering their true selves. It therefore behooves GOP operatives and the conservative establishment to get these people to understand who they truly are. Once this awakening can be achieved, the GOP will receive the votes of those who have learned about their authentic political and spiritual home. Complicating this process of self-discovery is the confusion besetting 90% of American black voters who somehow imagine that the Democratic Party is where they belong. Thus, Republican commentators are trying to disabuse them of their political illusions by pointing out, for example, that the Democrats are the party of John C. Calhoun and other early 19th century defenders of slavery. Democrats were also conspicuous in the supposedly treasonous behavior of those who formed the Confederacy in 1861, something that American blacks should never forget. Supposedly of equal importance is the revelation that the Democratic Party as late as the 1960s included Southern segregationists who voted against civil rights legislation. Such thundering denunciations, no matter often repeated, don't seem to resonate with black voters, any more than other factoids relating to a now remote past. For example, that Republicans in the 1850s were often nativists, something that hardly sways or troubles these days members of the Republican Jewish coalition or Catholic anti-abortionists. There are good reasons that certain voting blocs stay where they are, even if we can find sound, not eccentric reasons for why they should change their affiliation. The Democrats provide blacks with preferred access to jobs and college entry. And equally important, they play up their victim status in a predominantly white society. The mystique of victimhood clearly animates certain voters, more than preaching about colorblind meritocracy or about why it's important that the state should treat all of us in the same manner. A party made up of grievance groups can connect with those who nurse grievances and hope to be rewarded based on collective victim claims. In this country and throughout the West, self-designated minorities are lining up to receive goodies because of their conferred victim status. Of course, we can raise moral objections and even wax indignant about such un-American politics, but accommodating grievance claimants works as a political tool, which is one of the reasons the Dems win so often, particularly in the city. No matter how badly black neighborhoods are convulsed by violent crime, no matter how shamelessly black Democratic politicians neglect this problem, those in charge are not likely to be replaced, least of all by black Republicans, who are often viewed as race traitors. In the latest Virginia gubernatorial race, the Democrat Victor Abigail Spanberger picked up 94% of the black vote. Her black Republican opponent, Winsome Sear, a very nice lady and a very devout Christian, received by contrast only 3.4%. Similarly, Jews who view themselves as victims of white Christian prejudice are not about to vote Republican. And it's not about rational calculation. It's because the fear of white Christian anti-Semitism probably surpasses For most American Jews, their anxiety about things that should concern them more, like unvetted Muslim immigration or having criminal illegals whisked into the country by Democratic politicians looking for future voters. It makes no difference whether certain ancestral anxieties have become groundless and mixed in with garbled memories of one-time Tsarist oppression or horror stories about the Klan. Neither the fears nor the voting habits of those affected are likely to be changed, whether by Fox News or the Jewish Republican Coalition. There is electoral value in offering social and emotional patronage, especially for a party that raises tax, gets rid of bail laws, and opens the borders to millions of illegals. Republican operatives should therefore look for voters where they're most likely to be found. They should stop obsessing about natural Republicans and start recruiting those who already lean in their direction. The Republican Party is more likely to win over recently arrived African blacks than those blacks who have been marinated in stories of white American racism and whose collective identity is reinforced by hatred for the GOP. Republicans are also more likely to win the votes of Jews whose ancestors came from Muslim countries than Jews who still know stories of oppression under Christian rulers. Republicans also do better among Soviet Jews than among those Jews whose ancestors came from Eastern Europe before the Communist Revolution. They also win more support from Orthodox Jews than from those in Reform congregations. Most relevant, there are lots of Americans who lean right but don't vote. I live in a part of Pennsylvania that is full of low-intensity conservative voters. And it amazes me that the GOP doesn't make the same effort to energize these voters and drive them to the polls, if such things still exist, as the Democrats do with anything that's even minimally sentient. The Republican activist Scott Pressler, who comes from my part of Pennsylvania, made a name for himself by recruiting low-intensity Republican voters, starting with members of the Pennsylvania Dutch community. This may have contributed to the margin by which Trump carried our state in 2024. The natural Republican fantasy seems to survive as a boomer fixation, one that is motivated by a desire to incorporate into one's party certain minorities to showcase one's inclusiveness and freedom from bigotry. This mindset seems common among the nice people of a certain age, who may be haunted by the left's charge of prejudice. Such people hope to make their detractors like or respect them, something that's not likely to happen, but by working to lure designated minorities into their party, or at least exaggerating their success in doing so, such people feel better about themselves and their virtue. I am truly underwhelmed by the messaging of GOP spokespersons who tell us how well they've recruited black voters. Their peak success was reached in 2024 when Trump received 15% of the black vote, as opposed to his dismal record 4 years earlier when he only obtained 8%. Although that upward movement represents an improvement, Trump, as Pew Research properly notes, still lost the black vote to the Democrats overwhelmingly. My question, couldn't all that happy talk and frantic outrage have been better spent going after more white evangelicals? This is not to scorn anyone's vote, but in a situation of limited resources and manpower, certain demographics offer the Republicans much more than others. White evangelicals are the GOP's most reliable voters. Over 86% vote Republican when they turn out to vote. In Tennessee's 7th District, where Republican congressional candidate Matt Epps won by only 9 points about 3 months ago, and where the GOP badly underperformed, evangelical turnout was noticeably below average. That media's scorned base is the one that Republicans should cultivate nonstop. But certain preoccupations have less to do with winning elections than gaining brownie points, if I may show my age by resorting to a dated usage. Thus, we continue to hear that blacks are stampeding into the GOP and that some leftists are moderates as opposed to full-time woke obsessives. In any case, the right and the GOP, to whatever extent it defines itself as such, should stop caring about pleasing its adversaries. If they don't take that step, they will continue losing winnable elections, and deservedly so. Above all, it is necessary in our polarized society, as Stefano pointed out, to recognize certain hardened polarities and to take them into account in plotting electoral strategy. It's my hope that as a younger generation takes over the GOP, those delusions that I've highlighted will be gone with the wind, if I may quote the title of a truly great movie that is now only shown with unsightly warnings about its insensitively reactionary content. Thank you.
We'll open it up for questions. I want to start off, you said something very interesting at the end that I want to touch upon. It seems like the Republican Party, Republican operatives, were truly obsessed with trying to make our adversaries happy and have them respect us in some strange way. The left is more concerned about winning. The right is more concerned about keeping some sort of decorum that no longer exists. Can you go a bit deeper into that for us?
No, I totally agree with you. I think that is a significant difference in two parties. About 7-8 years ago, I wrote a piece on for American Greatness on thumos, ho thumos in Greek, which is like, strength, vigor, pointing out that it's a kind of uneven match, since the Democrats are serious about winning. They're not only serious, they want to create a one-party state. I mean, if you notice the things that they do. And they incite riots, they support the rioters, they are engaged in insurrection. I mean, I don't know what else you can call it at this point. The Republicans want to be nice. I listened to this nonsense on Fox News in which Bret Baier tells us that we have to have common ground. Then he invites Republican and Democrat, and they talk about some issue about whether we should have cleaner streets or something they agree about or pretend to agree about. This is all nonsense. I think the polarization runs very deep. I agree with you entirely that there are very few undecided. The country is polarized. It really doesn't. I've reached the point that I do not believe affordability is much of an issue of any kind, because I really do not understand how people who voted for Joe Biden and his party in midterms, when you had galloping inflation, 10 million people running over the border, crime, all kinds of, they did well. And now Trump apparently has wrecked the economy and people are going to vote. I don't believe that. I think it's a matter of voter turnout and which party gets more people to the polls. And of course, in the case of the Democrats, being sure they don't cheat very much. So I really don't. By the way, I think the fact that the Democrats work so hard to win is in some ways admirable. I mean, I don't like them. I despise their policies, but I do admire their spirit. I wish Republicans were like this. I tell people I wish we could trade we could trade Susan Collins for Chuck Schumer. I don't like Schumer's stand. I think they're horrible, but he certainly works hard, or AOC or any of these other people. The Republicans don't have this thumos, this spirit of defiance, the willingness to fight for what they want very, very effectively.
I didn't tell him to mention the Greek word, by the way. That was all him. Okay. I think. Look, you can see even by the way the Democrats are acting, flooding our border with criminal migrants. They have essentially given themselves a ticking time bomb to a permanent majority within this country. And Republicans in Congress now are suddenly trying to hold hearings about ICE and Renee Good and Alex, I'm forgetting his last name, Preddy. Suddenly, if the Democrats were in charge and they were doing that, they said, oh, well, they didn't shoot him in the head enough. That's what they would have been saying if they were the ones in charge. So I completely agree. We do not have that fighting spirit. I think a lot of people here in New York can see it, that there isn't a big fighting spirit. But I know here at this club, we're cultivating that the most and that strength.
There's one other point I would make. I'm amazed that no one on Fox News or the New York Post, no one could seem to figure out why is it that Barack Obama gave Homan an award for kicking out 1 million illegals, and right now the Democratic, and you had Chuck Schumer wanted a border wall and so forth. Now they're exact, and all these people, of course, just run and do whatever the Hollywood, whatever the left tells them to do, or the Democratic Party. But why have the Democrats changed their position? It's very clear, because in 2008 or 2010, they were still, at least to some extent, a working class party. The working class does not want illegals to come into the country and take their jobs, particularly the unskilled labor. So the Bernie Sanders was violently against illegals. Cesar Chavez was against them. The French Communist Party opposed letting immigrants come into the country from third world countries, because they take away jobs from the French workers. So it's the Democratic Party since then has become a woke party and a party of government workers. I mean, the people who vote for it are not, Joe Sixpack anymore. They're Renee Good. It's very obvious why the Democrats, and they totally changed. So they gave Tom Homan an award. Barack, of course, the last year of Barack Obama's presidency, he decided he'd make the change, if you remember, right? So that he became, they stopped the border controls they had during his first 7 years as president. This is because the base of the Democratic Party changed.
I'm going to open it up to an audience question. Who has a question? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. I saw one go up over there. Right there.
Thank you, Dr. Gottfried. I'm going to be invoking Jay Burton's GOP Samson option.
Mm-hmm.
What does a right-wing youth do in the face of the GOP that seems to be intentionally imploding, specifically to blame the youth and get away from the more radical right-wing ideas that they hold?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, you only have two national parties in the United States, and I would be very happy to have a conservative party or something like that to vote for. But I think we're going to have to do the best we can to change the Republican Party. And I see the populist right, being lodged in the Republican Party, and if they can gain more control, there might be a chance of them. But I think there has to be a fighting spirit. And I think they have to understand that the Democratic Party, are not their friendly competitors. They're their enemies. And I think the Democrats treat Republicans as enemies. The Republicans treat Democrats as people with whom you have to make a compromise. So I think that attitude has to change.
And I'll add onto that. The only way that right-wing youth is going to be able to make a real significant difference is to organize. We have to organize.
Mm-hmm.
That's why having clubs like this is so important. Mm-hmm. Last year in our primaries, we went 100% undefeated. Some of those victories were against party-backed candidates. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to be the next Matt Gaetz. Everybody wants to be the next Donald Trump. I ran for office, right? Mm-hmm. And I found that the most effective way to make a difference within the party is to be the mechanic, to be the person behind the scenes getting their hands dirty, lifting up their sleeves and making a difference within the party structure. Just because your name isn't on a ballot doesn't mean you're not making a very significant difference. Running for county committee, running for district leader, these are positions that people should absolutely be running for. Not everybody's made to be in front of the camera. Some people are made to be behind the camera. Some people are made to do completely different things. So party building, especially here in New York, where some of these county organizations are so weak, joining an organization like this, running for a district leader, county committee, so critically important. And if you want to learn more about that, we have people. We have our campaigns committee chairman, Mario Nicoletto, in the back that you could speak with. But getting involved and getting organized is so pivotal. Let's get another question from the crowd. We have one in the back over there.
Thank you for coming and speaking with us, Professor. My buddies and I here are here on behalf of the New York University College Republicans, and we've definitely experienced the death of the Normie at our school. For example, last week I was laughed out of my law class for suggesting that state non-cooperation with ICE is unconducive to rule of law. I wanted to ask you, Professor, both in your analysis and looking back on your academic career, if you could elucidate what the role of colleges and universities have been on the death of the Normie.
Yeah, I mean, I taught in a university or a college for over 40 years. As I told people, I started out as a professor teaching at Yale, and I landed up in a small German pietist college in Pennsylvania. And I was lucky to have that job because in that 40-year period, the universities became increasingly radicalized. And they become even worse since I have retired. I think trying to change them at this point may be almost hopeless. And the attempt of the Trump administration to defund them may be the only thing you can do. I have a Southern friend, a conservative friend, who says the answer may be napalming them. That way you get rid of them.
Satire.
Right. There's somebody here from the Yale Buckley Club. I wish you well, and I'm supposed to speak to the Yale Political Union in March. I wish you well. I wouldn't even know how to begin. I wouldn't even know how to begin improving the college where I taught, which is across the street from where we live. And we only visit it when we take our pet dachshund for a walk there. I have absolutely nothing to do with them anymore, and they're crazy. I mean, they now have 30 genders or 40 genders or some. And I know Tony has some connection to Columbia. It's the same thing. You just don't know where to begin. And of course, the people there are self-selected, the ones who become academics. I mean, they generally fit in, and the people who are more conservative are the oddballs. And what is scary is they've also now taken over medical schools, these nuts. They've taken over science departments. I would hate to be treated by a doctor who was certified through some affirmative action program. But it is possible this could happen. There's so much ground that has been lost over the last 40 to 50 years. And even though I write books on this, I do not fully understand how this has happened. And it not only has happened here, it's worse in Western Europe, Canada, England, Germany. They're worse than it is in the United States. And it's the same takeover by the left, but the anti-discrimination regime is the same and so forth. So, there really is a lot to be recovered at this point because we have lost lots and lots of ground. And at this point, I wouldn't even know how to start with universities except by taking money away, which is what what the Trump administration has done.
Yeah, even in St. John's University, I don't know if you guys saw in the Post, they've denied them a TPUSA chapter there. And they told me that when they were up in front of the student government, they were literally laughing at them as they were trying to make their pitch. And I had an interesting conversation. I'm not going to say who it was because I'm going to speak ill of them. But I had a conversation with a conservative friend of mine, and I said, could you believe this? They didn't allow them. It's like, we should do something about it. And this conservative friend of mine said, well, this is a private institution. They have to go through the proper channels in order to, either we want to win or we are going to lose, right? We need to be as ruthless as they are, or we are going to lose. We must be we must be as cunning as serpents at this point, right? And as innocent as doves if we intend on winning this battle. So we need to pull everything out in order to help retake our country. And I think that the Republican suicidal inclination of being kind has been a real disaster for us. So, all right, any other questions? Okay. We have a few other questions. Hold on, I want to get to some. One right here, right in front of me. The other question.
So, yeah, my question is, after seeing everything that's been unfolding in Minneapolis, I was quite startled at how recalcitrant Donald Trump is to prosecute his enemies and crack down on his opponents. And yeah, there's a huge asymmetry when you see the left, how they prosecute their enemies, January 6th. Do you think that this asymmetry stems from the fact that, yes, there's this like hopeless desire from the right to please the left, and how do you see that unfolding? Because it doesn't seem like it's a tenable situation if the next administration we have like a huge crackdown on the right. So,
Yeah, I'm thinking, actually, in the short run, that the Republican Party cannot afford to lose the midterm elections. Because everything is lost if you lose those midterm elections. And right now, the Democrats are gaining support by unleashing riots because they have the mass media on their side. Something is going to have to be done to control the mass media. This has nothing to do with First Amendment rights, they are a vast monolithic empire. They are a state within a state, okay? And they are able to reach tens of millions of people and lie to them. And when Trump says they are the fake media, that is too kind. They're much worse than that. You know, they are an incendiary, insurrectionist media. That's what they have become. And the question is, what do you do with them? Well, one thing you can do is break them up. They can invoke antitrust laws against them. Another thing is to insist on a fairness doctrine. Because they're all like one side. You know, I live in a small borough in Pennsylvania. You turn on local news, it sounds like MSNBC. There's no difference. And it's, of course, it's affiliated. I used to write for the local newspaper. My column was canceled, and then the newspaper was taken over by a leftist conglomerate. This is happening all over, but something has to be done to break this leftist monopoly, media monopoly. And they'll say, oh, it's this. Of course, the left doesn't care about academic. You know, when Obama went after them, right? When after people who criticized him and used the FBI, they didn't complain. It was fine. They love Obama. He can just shut down the other side. They do not care about this. They want total control over opinion. And I think it's very important that some way be found to smash the media empire. But I think in the election, in the near term, it is important that the Republicans go out and recruit all these low-intensity voters everywhere. You know, another thing that should be done is some way has to be done to control the possibility for democratic cheating. People, you know, Trump is always, I want elections to be in the precinct, both parties can observe. I would agree. I think there's the minimal requirement. We let just about anybody vote at this point, but we don't want cheating. One of the points I always make, and it absolutely horrifies listeners, if you want a constitutional republic, not everybody should vote. I think there was when somebody asked Bucky about the Voting Rights Act, he said, do you think all blacks should vote? He says, I don't think all whites should vote. I agree. I agree. There should be requirements to vote. When I was in late 1950s, I was in a high school class in American civics. I was told by my teacher that voting is not a right, it's a privilege, which is what it is. It's a privilege you give to citizens and only certain citizens. I think we've been much too free with the franchise. And of course, the birthright citizenship is just like over the top. I mean, clearly, the Constitution does not intend, you know, anybody who comes into the country illegally to have their child become. This is insane. And some Republicans are actually afraid to take a position against it. But I think something has to be done to control the size of the electorate and to smash the media empire, because otherwise we're not going to win.
Rachel, how much time do I got?
Time for maybe one or two more.
Okay, we'll do one or two more.
Questions?
Yeah, we got one right here.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Okay.
I have a question, because I know you hate the Democrats, but I also know you're not a big fan of the neoconservatives as well.
No.
Okay, so I supported Trump. I voted for him in 2016. And as far as I'm concerned, what he's doing now, talking, you know, from Cuba,
Mm-hmm.
what he did in Venezuela, what's Iran and all this stuff, is a betrayal of what I believed America First was supposed to be. Now, I know that he hasn't invaded anywhere yet, but the stage is set for lots of neoconservatism without the preaching of democracy spreading. So what do you think about that idea?
I don't feel betrayed, and I have to be honest, I'm not an isolationist. People are always shocked that after the neoconservatives spent 40 years trying to destroy me professionally, I actually agree with them sometimes. I think what was done in Venezuela was fine. I'm not against the bombing of the Iranian nuclear installations. What I'm against, these forever wars, getting involved, and then trying to convert people to the latest version of American democracy. I'm totally opposed to that. But I think world powers have interest. And, it would be very nice if the mullahs fell from power in Iran. I would not be against that. I'm against sending armies in. In the case of the Ukrainian, I side with Ukrainians, but I think there's only so far the United States should go in terms of our own geopolitical interest in getting involved there. But I don't feel betrayed because I was never an isolationist.
Do you think it might be a good idea that maybe Trump could go on television and maybe at least try to lay out an explanation as to why he's doing what
Yes,
he's doing
absolutely.
now, instead of talking about
No,
Bob Minor?
I think Trump has a communications problem. I think he has to lay out the reasons and explain why it is different from Afghanistan and the stupid war in Iraq, which I totally opposed and for which I was attacked. I mean, the Iraq thing was idiotic. But I think military operations are sometimes necessary, as long as they do not involve occupation and nation building and so forth.
My fear is that's where it's going to go. That's my only fear.
Well, I don't know. I will reserve my condemnation until it happens.
Do we got time for one more? Okay, right there.
Thank you, Dr. Gottfried. I have a quick question about Blue Dot Democrats. So I'm originally from Rhode Island, and so I assume some states so much function the
Yes.
same way. There is a minority but sizable amount of Democrats that hold conservative beliefs. Some of them oppose abortion. They have some local politicians have an A+ NRA rating, so they hold these positions. But it always sort of confused me by this time why they're still Democrats. Why some of these guys voted for Trump, but they still elect locally at least these Democrats that hold these supposed conservative policies. So I was wondering, what is your take on this group of Democrats?
Give up on them. No. I mean, I'm like listening to this lady on Fox News, Leslie Marshall. She says, I'm a devout Catholic, and of course I'm a Democrat. Can you actually say you're a devout Catholic and you're a Democrat and support a party that has 30 different genders and sex change operations, and you can abort babies, if they come out of the birth canal of the mother, and you say, I mean, at that point you just give up. I mean, these people are morally confused or so politically committed to the left, it's not going to make any difference. They're not low-intensity conservatives, low-intensity Republicans. They're people that are, at this point, irredeemably on the left.
Okay. Thank you guys very much for coming out today, and thank you, Doctor. We appreciate
Well, thank you.
everything. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to our first speaker series of 2026. We appreciate it. Rachel, how long do we have the room for?
This particular?
Yeah.
Till 10.
Okay, grab a drink, enjoy, guys, mingle.
Upcoming events.
Oh, yes, upcoming events. Wait. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Hot Toddy Tuesday.
If you know friends that wanted to come to this event but could not make it, we have Hot Toddy Tuesday. Come in February 10th. We have our Arts Caucus Writers Workshop. When is that? The 6th. What else we got?
We have the Women's Caucus.
Our Women's Caucus. We love women, folks. What is that? The 17th, Paint and Sip, super cute. Mario, what do we got? Building political power. This is exactly what we were talking about. Somebody asked a question about how do they get involved. If you want to learn how to build political power, you want to learn how to get involved, this Saturday, on Eventbrite. Go and find our event. This Saturday, we are having our Building Political Power workshop. We're going to have a ton of great speakers with the campaigns committee. Yeah, what? Arts Caucus on Friday. Yes, I think I said that.
Catholic Caucus Valentine's.
Catholic Caucus Valentine's Day. Go on our Eventbrite. Look at all of our events. We've got a ton of really great events. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.